We had a kasha. We had an important observation. The observation is that Torah is also lakus. In other words, in this Igeres HaKedesh, there was so much emphasis placed on mitzvahs and Torah that's negea liba de hilchase. You almost sound like if you're learning Torah, which is not halacha lama, in other words, not halachas ashchiches. He mentions over here leisas. So it's like Avat Hashem Yiras Hashem, which is a midah enushas, a human emotion. So he says no, Torah is a lakus because it comes through the channel of neshama. As you learned in the shir of yesterday, that there's actually two aspects to neshama. There's the aspect of neshama which gets lost in nefesh ruach. So even though it's from chachma and bina, as the shaykh is ready to tell him, and the aspect of nefesh ruach which may be in malchus, but it doesn't get lost. It remains a lakus because its mitzias, its inyan is not to be mashpia to nefesh and ruach, but to be makabel chachma, to be makabel ein sof. So the yid learns Torah, any Torah, it's a lakus. This is what we learned. Because it passes through the channel of Eira Neshama. Now the Rebbe asks, I'm waiting the kakasha. And he gives two answers. The first answer is okay. The second answer is like rewriting the whole shiurim from before again. The second answer is like saying everything I said earlier, cancel it. You don't need it. The kasha says, it says in Arizal, when a person has a kavana, and I think it means kavana when he's learning Torah, he creates a garment of neshama. Torah, but through the Torah itself, he creates levush ruach, a garment of ruach. You have nefesh ruach and neshama, right? When you're going to go to Gan Eden, your nefesh ruach and neshama is going to want to have tainuk from the avodah you did in this world. So it needs levushim. So you have different levushim with different madregas of the neshama based on the eichus of the avodah. So kavana, it creates for you a levush in the madreg of neshama. And Torah creates through a levush of ruach. The ruach had the mishnah, the yitzira, the ruach, the neshama, the the agmara. Okay, so you create a ruach through the mishnah, the learning mishnah, a levush and yitzira, and ruach, I don't know what this means, the neshama, the bri, this word neshama, I don't know what it means, I think gemara. So the kasha is, the whole time we're saying that the ganze inyan of Torah is that it's inyan from neshama, right? Here it says befedish narizal, that's inyan from ruach. And we know what's the problem with ruach. That ruach is not alakus, it's nivra, it's ma'al master. So he gives two answers. Yeshlema, the first answer is the hainu davka de Torah sa'adam be'lam hazem ha'ilem l'mayla. The Torah of the Eibishter is neshama. Torah of the Eibishter gives it, and it comes through say the reshlashlos into be yitzir nasiya till asiya gashmis kamayim ha'yerd v'mokum gavela mokum nomuch passes through neshama. But when you then learn that Torah, you're being maila, you're lifting it up. And you're creating levushim and ruach. In other words, Torah is a lakus, and you're sort of expanding the lakus to ruach through your learning it. But the Torah itself was given at Sinai. And again, the word Talmud is a very confusing word. Why does he use the word Talmud? Why doesn't he use the word Torah? Hu b'neshama, it's neshama. Therefore, Gemara, when you learn it, it's mevarer ruach, v'chein b'mishnah di yitzira, and when you learn mishnah nilama yitzira, it's mevarer ruach in yitzira. So Torah is neshama, and when you learn it, you make a lakus out of ruach as well. It's a good answer, because according to this answer, everything we said before stands. The Torah is a lakus that passes through neshama. You are also creating a lavush of ruach through your limud Torah. You with me so far, right? Va'avim tim talema, second teretz. And if you're going to say shegama nitin misina ruach dibri yitzira, the Torah which comes through the Eibishter, passes through Ruach, Abriya, and Yitzira. In other words, the exact opposite of everything we're learning until now. Thank you very much. Right? Because until now, the whole point was the Torah is special. Give me a cup. The Torah is special because it's Neshama and it's Alakus and Biyah. Even if it's Ruach, and the Ruach is Nivra, and if Torah is passing through Ruach, the Ruach is Nivra, how could be Torah be Alakus? He gives you a very interesting answer. Harineda, it's known, Shekol Malach Shu Shliach Malmayla, every Malach, while he's a Shliach from the Eibishter, during the duration of the Shliachas, not before, not after, Ozai Niki B'Shem Havaya Mamish, he's called by the Eibishter's name, Hashechem Bekibu, which rests inside of him. When a Malach is not a Shliach, Yeshli Shem Acher, he has a different name, Kifi Avidase, based on its own service. Like you have in this week's Parsha, Yankov asks the Malach, what's your name? He says, Lama Zetishal Shmi. There's two in Yonim. There's a Malach based on Shlichas, and he's called Hashem. There's a Malach Stam, his own Aveda, he has his own name, and then he's a Nivra. And when he's not engaged in the Shlichas, when he's entity unto himself, he says Havaya is removed. Pardon me? It's a Shlichas, he's a Malach, he's a Nivra, and that's why he says 3 times Kaddish Havaya. Havaya is removed from the 3 levels. Claiming this means Havaya moved L'men Hashem, Havaya separate from him. This is a very interesting concept. You have it already in the Shoinim that Ramban talks about it. A Malach is a Nivra. We all know that. We've been learning that for the last 3 days. A Malach's Metzias is that it serves the Eibishter, but it's not a Lakus, it's not Eibishterliness. Pshas HaShlichus Mamish, a Malach is totally bottled. Like you find in Chumash, Hashem is talking to Hagar, sometimes it says Hashem is talking, sometimes the Malach is talking, because it's one and the same thing. But you have to understand something. A Malach Beis HaShlichus is bottled to Lakus, but it's not the same thing as Sfiris. Sfiris, Ivach HaYechad, Ivach HaMeichad, are Lakus B'yetzim. A Malach is a Nivra. But during the Shlichus, it's being a Nivra is suspended, it becomes bottled to the Eibishter. Before and after it's a Metzias. It's only during that it loses its Metzias. So you have to think about this. Before we said, Teid is a Lakus and B'yakid is passing through Neshama. Neshama is a Lakus. It's a Lakus B'yetzim. Now he's saying, Teid passes through Ruach. Ruach is Nivra? Yeah, but when Ruach carries Teid, it's bottled like a Malach. So you have to now start sitting down and figuring out what's the difference in the oifen of the alakus of Teda Lamata. If you go in the first oifen of the Sigeres HaKedesh, the Teda passes through Neshama, and the oifen that he's saying now, the Teda passes through Ruach. And of course, the Alter Rebbe doesn't explain anything, he leaves a lot of homework. The same as Mamish. If it's true, like it says in Kislev Arizal, the Teda comes down through the channel of Ruach, and not through the channel of Neshama, that this is Islam, so the Talmud b'chinas Ruach de Bria. The Talmud comes through Ruach of Elam HaBria. V'amishna b'Ruach de Yetzira. And Mish is Ruach of Yetzira. That l'cha'eda Ruach is Nivra, right Helam has Taberima Nivra, and the teretz is that when Ruach is carrying Teda, Heim Shluchi Havaya. They are then the Shluchim of the Eibishter, their bottle. Taina, this means Kelm Tenuk with Atzilos, the Kelm the vessels of Atzilos. Hachitzeinim b'Talmud, the outer Kelim is in Talmud. V'ayim Tzayim b'Mishnah. And the middle Kedem is in Mishnah, in other words, based on Bria and Yetzira, and the Ruach becomes a Shliach for those Kelim. That's what Shliach for Havaya means, Kelim of Atzilus. Okay? Asher Mishnah v'Talmud, Shabahem, and the Mishnah and Talmud, Shabahem nimshochem Yisei Daba, get their Chayis, get their truth from Chochma of Atzilus. Hamakabel mechachma stimah da rachapa to get from chachma of keser. Shebei meluba shein tzei baruchu much avein tzei baruchu. Says the Rebbe v'nimtza. Thus, it turns out she'erein tzafu sheim avaya, erein tzafu ebish zeim avaya, sheichin beruach debiyah. You see the word? It's resting not only in the neshama, it's also resting in the ruach of biyah, b'mikro mishnah Talmud and Chumash, which is till Asiyah, and Mishnah which is till Yetzirah, and Talmud which is till Bria. Okay, stop. That's all. So this is the last point. The Rebbe asked a kasha from Kislev Arizal, which is what these are about. This is Alter Rebbe's notes. He's writing for himself. And the Teda is a whole new way for understanding how Teda is alakus. And the difference in the first Eifin and the second Eifin is enormous. Because in the first Eifin it's coming through a lavush, which is alakus. Second Eifin it's not, it's borrowing it. You understand? And now comes the maskana. Then when you learn Teda, you bring down the infinite light of the Eibishter into this lowest world. That the world should become included in the bottle of the light of the Eibishter. And again, this doesn't only mean when you're learning Teda Liba de Hilchaseh, this means when you're learning any kind of Teda, any part of Teda. Because of Kol Sof, Teda is a lakus, even if it's passing through the lavush of Nefesh. Kizak Kol Ha'adam, this is why the Eibishter made a person to be revatal the world to the Eibishter, the Mamsh Chalakus. And he continues. This is the job of Rashbi, and all the Tanoim and Amiroyim ben Nigla, when they learned Nigla. And I'm going to add, we don't mean the Nigla liba de Hilchaseh. We mean the Nigla which is Befedish, Halacha Sheinim Shchiches, it's not Nigela Maise, it's Teda for the sake of Yagel Teda V'Yadeh. It's just two things. Number one, but what's the deal of learning Teda which is not Nigela Maise? He says, number one, light. And number two, and to clarify the clarifications of the sparks of Klippas Nega, called Meshach Zman HaGolos, during the duration of the time of Golos, the Sholto, Yilon, and the Tevara, that is the dominance to the Eitz Hadas Tevara, as we had earlier in Siman Chof Ches, in Siman Chof Vav in the Geras HaKedesh, and we're going to have it on the next page. Because as the pasuk says, Ace, it's the time Asher Sholto to Adam v'Adam B'Gemer, that the Adam del Yumazeh, that Adam of Klippa, seems to dominate Adam of Kedusha. And what's the end of the pasuk? Lera'alei, ultimately the Adam del Yumazeh suffers. It looks like Klippa wins Kedusha, but the point is that Safkas of Kedusha should conquer from Klippa. Kizeu tachas ha'ishtalshlus, which is the point of the whole ishtalshlus. Sheyede, the alien, the mata, the one above should descend below. V'yilei dira b'tachteinim, Hashem should have a home in the lowest world. Kidei lahaleis, to raise up the world, that there should be achdus between the world and Elokus. Now, so when you learn Torah, you mamshech Elokus, which Malachim can't do. Remember the discussion before. The Chilul Rechimu was only up. Down has to be through mitzvahs, and now we're saying down is through Torah also. But remember, we're talking not about Torah, which is negei lahalacha lamaisa. We're talking about Torah shleili b'delchas. I'm sorry. Malachas einam shchichim. Pratei halachas le'shchichi klal. And he says, Pratei halacha le'shchichi klal amavara birudim. How could Pratei halacha le'shchichi amavara birudim if it's not negei lamaisa, right? So Dr. I was going to answer on the next page. And it seems to me that the next Yeras HaKedesh is mamash a direct hemshach to this one. It's almost like another note. It's a biyur lebiyur, because the whole Inyan is explaining how you could learn Torah in an Inyan which is no shachas anything in Al-Mazah Gashmi, and yet you mavara birudim. Now, and he goes back, Mashenkin Avedas HaMalachim, as opposed to the Avedah HaMalachim. And if I may add, this is true also of Neshamas Yisrael, in as much as they're serving Hashem, at Avas Hashem, and Yiras Hashem, without Torah and mitzvahs, that is the Chilul Rechimu Sichlim, that even when they're Yira and their Ahava is in the highest level, comes from their Seichel, they're not able to bring anything down. It's only raising up. And remember what we had earlier on the top of Kuf Nun Zayin Amid Aleph Amid Beis. Alter Rebbe said Bechinas Estalkus Levad Chas V'Sholem, and he explained what he meant by Estalkus. He didn't mean the Estalkus of Rosh Hashanah. He meant Aliyah of Shabbos and Yom Kippur, where the Kalim also go up. And nevertheless, he says Chas V'Sholem because it's not Mamala Kavanas Abriya. Kavanas Abriya is that the Lakus should come down. Okay, and Alter Rebbe concludes. And this explains where we create malachim from non-existences to existences. When we learn Torah even without kavana. Now listen carefully. If we would learn with kavana, so he said in the bottom of the previous page in the name of the Arizal, hakavana nasa levush neshama. When you learn Torah without kavana, you create a levush ruach, shebechinas ruach bilvad, she'ein elakus klal, which is not elakus. Right? So why would a Yid learn Torah to create malachim, which are ruach, which are not alakus? If you're creating malachim of neshama, which is alakus, it makes sense. And the answer is, lefish afal pikein, shem avaya shechen v'chuli v'dal, as we said before, when a Yid is learning Torah, even if the garment, the malach, is nivra, not alakus, it's ruach, but it's bottled to the alakus of Torah, b'shas ma'is, b'shas shlichus, and it's called Shem Havaya. So you see something else interesting here, that what he called before Lavush is here called a malach. You notice? What he called before Lavush is now called a malach. Your Torah creates garments. Now he calls those garments malachim. You're creating a malach which is a nivir, not a alakus. It doesn't matter because it's bottled to the Torah. Ad kan, lahav mashakos v'pi yitzchayim. Gendikt.